Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on Episode 9 of The Great Jahy Will Not Be Defeated. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So last we left off, Jahy had this rather unfortunate party with her assistant, I guess, Druj, that's your name, and it was rather pathetic, and in the meantime, we sort of saw Sarva lurking in the background, but she hasn't really done anything. And, I was sort of thinking to myself, we haven't seen much of Sarva, so it's probably going to be a Sarva episode, and I feel like, given this introduction, I'm kind of vindicated. The only question is, how is Sarva going to screw everything up? Sarva's a real accident-prone character, and maybe the bathhouse, that's kind of a less than ideal place. The thought occurs to me that the last episode also had Jahy going to the bathhouse, I believe. So I'm wondering if maybe this is a whole episode of Sarva sort of coincidentally following Jahy around and being trampled by her goings-on and just the chaos she manifests. And, it really does seem like this prediction is paying off. So, this was back in the previous episode when Jahy was teasing the landlord, and, I don't think she got walloped nearly as much as she deserved to at the moment, but, man, at a time like this, I feel like Sarva would probably be best to just, cut her losses, leave, and come back. Because, if her big fear is that Jahy would just blast her if they ever came into contact, maybe it's better not to put yourself in this situation. Of course, all of this is predicated on the idea that Jahy is a serious person, which, of course, we know not to be true. Sarva really doesn't have anything to actually worry about. And if the highlight of this bath is the luxurious shampoo, oh, I know where this is going. Jahy's gonna be using the whole thing, because I think that was sort of how the last episode ended, right? Or the bath segment at any rate? Oh. I was gonna say, Sarva could cut her losses by just, leaving with the shampoo, since that's the highlight. But if Jahy's taking the shampoo and using it liberally and, wastefully, wow, it's almost like your best bet was not to put yourself in a situation where such a thing could happen. Because, you never need that much shampoo as Jahy is using. That's just pure waste. Oh boy. Just, imagine being Sarva in this situation where you can't even speak up. That's just bad. You know, imagine being such a doormat that you can't even say, like, hey, don't use my shampoo. Or, just like anything even like less antagonistic than that. You know, just saying something like, hey, excuse me, this is actually my stuff. Oh boy. So Sarva's thinking that, like, you know, both being unarmed and unarmored in the bath, she could do something, but like, I feel like it's basically a foregone conclusion that someone would slip on the wet tiles. You know, sure, Sarva slipped on a bar of soap, but like, man, at least everything worked out kind of well. I mean, if I'm being honest, I was half expecting Sarva to like crack her head open on the side of a tub or something. I can't say it would be deserved, but it would be a little funny. So I guess just like that, you know, she's totally oblivious to everything else going on. You know, the manager is so nice to her and, you know, perhaps more importantly, so buxom that, like, everything else no longer matters. And I was gonna say, why did this not come up when Sarva was pretending to be Jahy and working with the manager? Because I feel like she might have noticed back then. Granted, you know, the bathhouse is a different sort of place, you know. So, I guess I'm wondering how Sarva's gonna go on from here, because I feel like, you know, a rational actor in this position would be trying to usurp Jahy and sort of like take her place and, you know, work with the manager all the time if she's so nice and buxom. Well, I guess that's it for Sarva. You know, no more scheming. Back to Jahy, I guess. So, she's in a good mood, which is unusual, and it's probably because of a combination of the bath and the party. I mean, she seems to think, oh, okay, I was gonna say, ooh, something really good must be happening. No, it's just the monthly payday. Which I guess is a really good thing when you're Jahy, but I feel like any good feelings would be immediately undercut by the boss saying, try not to squander it. You know, it's almost a foregone conclusion that Jahy will, in fact, squander it if she's, oh man. So she's going to, like, a department store to just buy things. You know, namely a weapon to defeat the magical girl. You know, I really don't think department stores would sell such a thing, really, unless you want to MacGyver something together. Oh no, Jahy's gonna be taken in by the salesman. Oh dear. So yeah, so like the sponges are boring and all that, but like, oh wait a minute, no, you get extra sponges for the same price. It's a bargain. It's a good deal. Don't you want to use your money wisely? And while Jahy does in theory, I wouldn't say this is the definition of using it wisely. An unexpected boon, says Jahy. I mean, that's one way of putting it, but man. So speaking of unexpected boons, you know, a specialized tool to cut pineapples. Like, how often are you eating pineapple where you would need such a tool? You know, I love pineapple as much as any man. But, you know, Jahy's buying the tool foolishly, assuming that she would also, you know, buy a pineapple every day. Like, you know, fresh fruit is usually, like, kind of on, like, the expensive end of, like, food you can buy. And, like, pineapples are fairly exotic, I'd imagine. I don't think they grow them natively in Japan, so you'd probably have to buy quite a few. Or rather, you'd have to spend quite a bit to buy one, I should say. And with Jahy's stated intention of eating pineapple every day, like, I mean, that's a really good way to go through your salary in short order. You know, not that she's having any problem with that, scoring all these quote-unquote bargains. So I guess her rookie mistake is assuming there's going to be a weapon section. You know, no department store that I know of would have such a thing. I mean, maybe Jahy could buy like a cast iron frying pan with the intention of bludgeoning the magical girl, but I mean, if you're buying a frying pan with a coating, like I feel like it's not going to be cast iron, you know? And that doesn't say it's any less usable as a weapon, but I feel like cast iron's just like the solid choice, you know, the gold standard, as you would say. So, Jahy has seemingly found her weapon of choice. Okay, yeah, toy lightsaber or something. Good in theory. Unfortunately, I don't think it'll bear out in actual combat. I mean, Jahy was, a mage, essentially, right? Like, she knew magic. Surely she doesn't have any martial training. You know, if it were to come down to a fight between her and the magical girl on a purely physical level, I don't think she'd win that encounter. You know, I like how even in her fantasy, she's not, like, outright winning. Like, that's how you know things are not going great. You know, between that, like, shadowboxing this cardboard box, and then, you know, that contrasted with her direly furnished apartment, you know, it's rather unfortunate that only now is she learning the lesson that she probably shouldn't have bought all this stuff, thus squandering her salary. Oh dear. You know, at least the sponge lives up to its reputation, but for Jahy to just give them all away, like... Oh... Very unfortunate of Jahy. You know, despite the title being The Great Jahy Will Not Be Defeated, it sure seems like she's pretty defeated right now. So, I mean, she didn't outright say it, but I feel like that was probably like the whole month's worth of salary. And so now she's setting up booby traps in her apartment. You know, good in theory if the magical girl does try to burst in, but I feel like, of all the visitors Jahy's likely to get, it's not going to be the magical girl, you know? It's probably going to be the landlord. And, you know, if she's setting up this glue trap right in the front door, you know, she's likely going to have to leave at some point, and I feel like... Oh, no. Like, it's not good to put glue traps everywhere. It's not good to booby trap the entirety of your apartment, and it's... Oh, jeez. So I guess it's good in theory, you know, if you're expecting a home invader, but, you know, I feel like Jahy's more likely to injure herself with all these booby traps, because she's essentially cutting off places where she can exist in her apartment without worrying. And, you know, I feel like these traps are a little bit too exposed for something that may or may not happen. You know, like this is basically like an invitation for something to go wrong. I imagine it's gonna go wrong in short order when like the landlord drops to visit or pick up rent and she gets bashed over the head with the wash tub. And come to think of it, that wash tub is how Jahy normally bathes. So, like, do you dismantle the booby trap when it's time to take a bath or what? Because when you get down to it, if ever there were a good time for the magical girl to ambush, it would be while Jahy's taking a bath and therefore vulnerable. But only now does Jahy realize the folly of booby-trapping everything, because there's now no real way to leave without getting bashed on the head by something. I mean, sure, she could just dismantle the traps, but I feel like Jahy's far too stubborn to do something like that. Okay, so she's just got it in her head that, like, yeah, she can't leave until the magical girl shows up, but what if that never happens? It's over. I'll just starve to death. But, you know, maybe just try and safely dismantle one of the traps, you know? That's probably the way to go. And come to think of it, why would the magical girl just show up apropos of nothing? Ooh. Say what you will about Jahy, but the trip seems to have worked. The landlord is stuck, and then the wash basin's gonna, whomp her on the head. Thinking about it, there's no real good outcome here. I guess maybe the good thing to do would be to sort of, yank the manager down to avoid the wash basin, but... man... I feel like the landlord's concern is misplaced here. She's worried about Jahy for taking that knock on the head, but maybe you should be more concerned about the tenant setting up booby traps in the property you own, And so now Jahy's acting like this is a big soliloquy, oh, I've sacrificed myself to protect a human. Come on now. That's being a little dramatic. I think the landlord should honestly stick her in the glue trap. Just lying supine on it. Okay, so the landlord's being oddly magnanimous for a tenant who never pays their rent. Because, the landlord was here to collect rent, and she's telling Jahy, look, if you're worried about home intruders, part of my job is to ensure the safety of my tenants. I mean, honestly, I think if it came down to a fight, the landlord, through sheer tenacity, would probably beat the magical girl. So, I guess this really is a Sarva episode after all, seeing as how we're checking back in with her. And, understandably, she's just having all sorts of nightmares about the horrible things she has to put up with. Jahy, the landlord, that giant dog. So the real question is Sarva just going to lie around having nightmares and moping, or is she going to get up and do something about it? I would hope it's the latter. She's understandably come to the conclusion that she needs to reevaluate her strategy. And, I don't know. She's paralyzed in terror at Jahy, but I feel like, maybe you have to recognize that Jahy is just kind of pathetic if a bunch of crows are bullying her over her food. So, maybe with the understanding that your great enemy is actually just super pathetic, maybe, maybe you can do something about it. Although I feel like if Sarva were to strike right now, she would be mistaken as a criminal picking on a child. And it would be funny to see Sarva get arrested. So it seems like, against her better judgment, she is willing to help Jahy. Wow, okay, so Jahy, gracious as ever, is unwilling to take aid, and would instead prefer to fight the crows to death. I mean, laudable, I suppose, but, oh no, Sarva, I think Sarva's screwed up, I thought the crows were just gonna get away with the food, which, of course they have, but they also beat up Sarva in the process. Jahy at least has an excuse for being beaten by crows, but Sarva, there's no excuse, if you're a grown adult and you can't, beat a bird in a contest of physical strength, I feel like it's over, especially if it's a crow, some birds get really big, raptors and their ilk, those are large birds, you can be forgiven for not wanting to tangle with them, but, a crow? That's, pretty embarrassing for having been beaten by a crow. So this is actually quite interesting. Sarva is confiding in Jahy, not entirely sure that Jahy is who she is, or rather, not knowing. And, wouldn't you know it, they sort of have a lot in common. They're both trying to get stronger for their own sake. You know, Sarva wants to defeat Jahy, Jahy wants to restore the Dark Realm and all that. You know, if Sarva was smart enough to put 2 and 2 together here, maybe she could learn the lesson that Jahy, despite being arrogant and overbearing and backbiting and just generally crap to work for, she does have a redeeming factor in that she is utterly determined to achieve her goals. And, you know, maybe that doesn't necessarily make it worthwhile for Sarva to work for her. You know, it should be a mitigating factor, you know? So, I guess Sarva's learned a lesson that, like, you know, 2 failures are nothing. And, you know, that brings to mind the Thomas Edison quote, something about, like, I learned 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb. However, in Sarva's case, I don't think she really has what it takes to defeat Jahy. You know, if anything, I feel like her role in the story is to just, you know, be a nuisance who causes the plot to move forward occasionally. So I guess just like that, you know, Sarva's unwilling to fight. Man, Jahy's just having a bad day. So, yeah, now is really not the time and place to cause a confrontation, I suppose. And at least Sarva sort of understands that. You know, that's uncommonly gracious of her to just sort of bow out, although I feel like it's more not wanting to cause a scene. And you know, when you get down to it, sometimes you have to wait for the right moment to strike, you know? You wouldn't want to brutally defeat Jahy while there's a whole bunch of, you know, bystanders who could witness the deed. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.